What happens when a simple weather segment turns into one of the most explosive moments in morning television? When Donald Trump agreed to appear on the Today Show for what was billed as a fun chat about his favorite seasons and climate predictions, nobody expected it would end with him storming off set. What began as a lighthearted exchange quickly spiraled into a tense confrontation that left both the audience and crew stunned. The morning started like any other at Rockefeller Plaza. Al Roker, the beloved weatherman known for his warmth and professionalism, was ready for what producers promised would be an easy, upbeat segment. Trump had been doing a media tour, and the Today team hoped to capture some of his trademark personality in a relaxed setting. The plan was simple. Talk about the weather, share a few laughs, and wrap things up smoothly. But instead, it became the segment everyone would be talking about. Trump entered the studio in high spirits, shaking hands, waving to fans and greeting Savannah Guthrie before heading over to Roker at the weather desk. The two exchanged friendly smiles as cameras rolled. Roker began with a harmless question. "So, Mr. President, what's your take on this unseasonably warm fall we've been having?" Trump leaned back confidently. "Well, Al, the weather's been beautiful. People keep telling me, 'Have you seen how nice it's been?' And I say, 'Yes, I have. I pay attention to these things.' A lot of people don't, but I do." Roker chuckled politely but pressed on. "Some meteorologists say this warmth is part of a larger trend with climate change. What do you think about that?" That's when the atmosphere shifted. Trump's smile tightened. "Climate change," he repeated slowly. "I've heard a lot about it, talked to very smart people. And they tell me it's not as simple as some make it sound." Roker's tone stayed professional, but firm. "Well, with respect, Mr. President, 99% of climate scientists agree human activity contributes to global warming." Trump smirked. 8%. I hear that number a lot. Impressive. But who counted? Who asked every scientist? Because I know some who don't agree. Very smart people. The tension was now unmistakable. Roker could have backed down, but instead he pushed forward. "The important thing is we're seeing real effects. Stronger hurricanes, more intense heat waves, changing rainfall patterns. These aren't opinions. These are facts." Trump fired back without missing a beat. "And we've always had hurricanes, Al. Always had heat waves. When I was a kid, we called it summer, not climate change." By then, the temperature in the studio had clearly risen, and not because of the forecast. What was supposed to be a light morning segment had turned into a fiery on-air showdown that no one could have predicted. Stay tuned, because what happened in the final moments left even veteran producers speechless. There was a ripple of laughter from the crew, the kind that breaks tension more than it relieves it. But Al Roker wasn't laughing. "The frequency and intensity are increasing," he pressed, his tone steady but firm. "I've covered these storms for decades. I've seen the changes myself." "I respect that," Trump said, though his voice carried more challenge than respect. "I really do. You've got great experience, Al. You're a weatherman, a very good weatherman, one of the best. Everyone knows that. But predicting the weather and understanding global climate systems, those are two very different things, wouldn't you say?" The jab was subtle, but everyone in the studio felt it. Roker's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Actually," he replied, "meteorology and climatology are closely related. I think I have a pretty good grasp of both." "I'm sure you do," Trump said with a tight smile, but there was an unmistakable edge now. "I'm sure you understand a lot. But you know what I understand? I understand that the climate has been changing for millions of years. Long before humans, long before cars, long before factories. The Earth goes through cycles. It's natural." Roker leaned forward slightly. "Yes, natural cycles occur, but what we're seeing now is happening far faster than anything in the natural record. The Industrial Revolution, fossil fuel emissions, deforestation. These are accelerating change beyond what would ever happen on their own." Trump waved a dismissive hand. "Fossil fuels built this country, Al. Built the modern world. Energy independence, economic growth, jobs, all of that comes from energy. And now some people want to shut it all down based on predictions that may or may not be accurate. Models that have been wrong before. Tell me, how many times have those models been wrong?" The conversation had fully shifted. no longer a friendly morning chat, but a live, on-air debate. Both men knew it, and neither seemed willing to back down. Roker's voice stayed calm, but steel crept into it. Models improve over time as data improves. That's how science works, but the trend is undeniable. The planet is warming, and human activity is the primary driver. Primary driver? Trump echoed with a smirk. You sound very certain about that. Very certain. But I remember when scientists were warning about global cooling. In the 70s, they said we were heading for an ice age. Now it's warming. So which is it, Al? Are we freezing or burning up? Those were early studies that were later refined, Roker countered. The scientific consensus now is based on decades of research, thousands of studies, overwhelming evidence. This isn't a matter of opinion. Everything's a matter of opinion until it's proven beyond any doubt, Trump shot back. And I haven't seen that proof. What I have seen is people pushing an agenda, one that hurts American workers, American businesses, and makes us dependent on other countries for energy. That's what I see. The segment was supposed to last 5 minutes. It was now past 12. Producers in the control room scrambled, whispering frantically through earpieces, trying to find a way to wrap it up before things got worse. But Trump and Roker were locked in. So you're saying all the scientists are wrong? Roker asked, his patience thinning. All the data, all the research, all the evidence, that's all just part of some agenda? I'm saying follow the money, Al, Trump replied sharply. Who's funding the research? Who profits from pushing climate change? Solar companies, wind companies, electric car makers, billions and billions of dollars at stake. And who's pushing the narrative? The same people who benefit from it. Doesn't that sound suspicious? What I find suspicious, Roker said, his patience finally cracking, is ignoring reality because it's inconvenient. We have satellites, ground stations, ocean buoys, ice cores, tree rings, all telling the same story. At what point does the evidence become enough? When it's definitive, Trump fired back. When it's based on facts, not predictions. Hard facts. The facts are right in front of you, Roker said, his voice now tight with frustration. The Arctic ice is melting at record rates. Sea levels are rising. Coral reefs are dying. These aren't forecasts. They're happening right now. Trump leaned forward, eyes locked on Roker. And the Arctic ice has melted before, Al. It's melted and refrozen countless times. The Earth's always gone through warm and cold periods. That's basic history. The Vikings settled Greenland when it was green. Did they have SUVs back then? Coal plants? No, but the climate changed anyway. Roker shook his head, exhaling through his nose. You're cherry-picking history and ignoring the bigger picture. The rate of change is what matters. We're seeing temperature shifts that used to take thousands of years happen in just a few decades. Or maybe, Trump countered, your data's flawed. Maybe the instruments aren't as accurate as you think. Maybe there are variables you're not considering. The sun, volcanic activity, ocean cycles. There are so many factors. And yet you're certain it's all because of humans? That sounds pretty arrogant to me, Al. By now the air in the studio felt electric. Cameras rolled. The audience watched in stunned silence. What was meant to be a cheerful weather segment had turned into one of the most unexpected and explosive moments in Today Show history. The word arrogant hung in the air like a challenge. Roker's eyes narrowed slightly. When he spoke, his voice was calm but deliberate, every word measured. What's arrogant, he said evenly, is dismissing the work of thousands of scientists just because it doesn't fit your narrative. What's arrogant is assuming you know better than the people who've spent their entire lives studying this. Trump leaned forward. And what's naive, Al, is believing everything you're told without questioning it. I question things. That's what leaders do. They don't just accept the so-called consensus. They dig deeper. They ask hard questions. And when I ask those questions about climate change, I don't get answers. I get attacked. People call me a denier. I'm not denying anything. I'm just not convinced. Convinced of what? Roker pressed. What would it take to convince you? Because from where I'm sitting, no matter what data you're shown, no matter what's happening right in front of us, you've already decided to reject it. I've made up my mind, Trump said, his tone rising, to protect American interests, to protect American workers, I'm not going to destroy our economy chasing after some theoretical crisis that may or may not be as bad as people say. You want to talk about a real crisis? Let's talk about jobs, people losing work, families struggling to pay bills. Let's talk about energy prices going through the roof. Let's talk about making America dependent on China for solar panels and batteries. That's a real crisis, Al. So it's about economics for you, Roker said, more statement than question. You're willing to risk the planet's future for short-term gain. Risk the planet? Trump repeated with a scoff. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The hysteria. The planet's been here for billions of years. It survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, and it's still here. The planet's not going anywhere. What we should worry about is people, real people with real jobs and real families. I'm not sacrificing their livelihoods for some doomsday prediction that keeps not happening. Keeps not happening? Roker shot back, his voice rising. We're seeing record-breaking heat every year. Catastrophic wildfires, floods, droughts, entire regions devastated. How is that not happening? Bad weather, Trump said flatly. It happens. Always has. You show me a wildfire today, I'll show you one from 50 years ago. You show me a flood, I'll show you a worse one from 100 years ago. Just because we have more cameras now doesn't mean the world's ending. Calling every storm proof of climate change. That's not science. It's not about single events, Roker insisted, his hands gesturing emphatically. It's about patterns, frequency, trends. The data shows a clear and alarming acceleration. To you, Trump interrupted, to people who want to believe it. But a lot of others, smart people, credible scientists, aren't so sure. And until they are, until there's absolute proof, I'm not supporting policies that hurt America. Roker took a slow breath, visibly trying to keep his composure. You know, I've interviewed a lot of people over the years, politicians, celebrities, scientists, and I've always tried to stay open-minded. But when someone ignores overwhelming scientific consensus, when they put politics above facts, that's not open-mindedness. That's willful ignorance. The studio fell silent. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances. Trump's face hardened, his expression turning cold. He stared at Roker for a long, heavy moment before speaking. Did you just call me ignorant? I said willfully ignorant, Roker clarified, standing his ground. There's a difference. You have access to all the information. You just choose to ignore it. Trump's jaw clenched. You know what, Al? I came here as a courtesy. To have a nice conversation, talk about the weather. Not to get ambushed with your climate change propaganda. And now you're sitting here insulting me on live television. Is that what today has become? Is that what NBC's about now? This isn't an ambush, Roker replied, his frustration bubbling to the surface. You brought up your views, and I responded with facts. If you're insulted by facts, that's not my problem. Facts, Trump repeated, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Your facts. The facts you choose to believe. But they're not the only ones out there, Al. And you, sitting here in your comfortable studio, in your comfortable job, calling me ignorant because I don't agree with you? That's pretty rich. Roker's composure cracked just slightly. My comfortable job involves standing in hurricanes, reporting from disaster zones, watching people lose everything. I've seen the wreckage of Katrina, Sandy, Harvey, Maria. I've stood in the debris and talked to families who've lost their homes. So don't tell me about comfort. The studio was dead quiet. The cameras were still rolling. And for the first time in years, the Today Show had gone completely off script. And I've rebuilt communities, Trump countered sharply. I've created jobs. I've built skyscrapers. I've strengthened economies. I know what it takes to make things work in the real world, not in some lab report or computer model. The real world, Al, that's where I operate. The real world is changing, Roker shot back, his tone firm. And if we don't act, it's going to change in ways that make all your buildings and all your jobs meaningless. Because you can't do business on a planet that's becoming uninhabitable. Uninhabitable? Trump let out a short, humorless laugh. Now you're talking about the planet becoming uninhabitable? This is exactly what I'm talking about. The exaggerations, the fear-mongering, the constant end-of-the-world talk. I've been hearing it my whole life. In the 70s, it was the coming ice age. In the 80s, acid rain. In the 90s, the ozone layer. Then it was global warming, now it's climate change. It's always something. And somehow, we're always supposedly on the brink of disaster, but it never quite happens. Those were real problems, Roker said, his patience thinning. And we fixed them by acting. We banned chemicals that were destroying the ozone. We cut pollution that caused acid rain. Things got better because we took responsibility. That's the whole point. Or maybe, Trump interjected, they weren't as bad as everyone said. Maybe the predictions were wrong. Maybe the models were flawed. And maybe, just maybe, it's the same story now. Overblown predictions, incomplete data, pushed by people with an agenda. The agenda is saving the planet, Roker snapped. The agenda is making sure our children and grandchildren have a world left to live in. What's your agenda, Mr. President? What's your excuse for doing nothing? My excuse? Trump's voice rose to match Roker's. I don't need an excuse for not buying into hysteria. I don't need an excuse for putting American workers first. I don't need an excuse for questioning narratives that don't add up. And I sure don't need to justify myself to you, Al, on your little weather segment. Little weather segment? Roker repeated, his voice tight with both anger and disbelief. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've earned the respect of my colleagues and the public. This little weather segment reaches millions of people every day. That's great, Trump said, though his tone made it clear he didn't mean it. Really? Good for you, Al. You've had a long career. But longevity doesn't make you right, and it doesn't give you the right to lecture me on live television or call me ignorant. I called your position willfully ignorant, Roker corrected, refusing to back down, and I stand by that. When someone has access to all the scientific evidence and chooses to reject it for political reasons, what else should we call it? Trump suddenly stood, his chair scraping against the floor. The movement startled the crew. You know what I call it? I call it courage. The courage to think for myself. Something you clearly don't understand. You just repeat whatever the approved line is, whatever your handlers feed you, and you call that journalism? It's not. It's puppetry. The word puppet hit hard. Roker rose too, facing Trump across the set. A puppet? I've reported from war zones, from disaster sites, from places where people were losing everything. Don't you dare call me a puppet! Then start acting like a journalist instead of an activist. Trump fired back, jabbing a finger toward him. Report the news, don't make it. That's what this is, Al. You brought me here to pick a fight, to get your viral clip. Well, congratulations. You got it. I brought you here for a conversation, Roker said, his voice trembling slightly now with emotion. A conversation about something that actually matters. And instead you turned it into a political circus like you always do. Like I always do? Trump's eyes widened. You're the one who called me ignorant. You're the one who turned a friendly talk into an interrogation. This is your show, Al. Your network. Your circus. Because some things are too important to just smile through, Roker said firmly. When someone with your platform spreads misinformation about climate change, when you convince millions to ignore a growing crisis, that's not something I can be polite about. Misinformation, Trump repeated, shaking his head. Here we go again. There's that word again, Trump said, his tone sharp with frustration. Anyone who disagrees with the official narrative is suddenly spreading misinformation. Anyone who asks questions is a conspiracy theorist. Anyone who thinks differently is labeled dangerous. That's the world you want, isn't it, Al? A world where everyone has to think the same, believe the same, or they're the enemy. That's not what I'm saying at all, Roker countered, his voice rising. I'm saying that when the evidence is overwhelming, when the science is clear and the experts agree, we should listen. That's not conformity. That's wisdom. The science is never settled, Trump shot back. Real scientists know that. They question, they test, they challenge assumptions. They don't just fall in line because everyone else does. And the fact that you think it's settled on something as complicated as the global climate tells me you don't really understand science at all. Roker's face flushed. Don't lecture me about science, he said heatedly. I've worked with climatologists, meteorologists, oceanographers, atmospheric scientists. I've seen the data, read the studies. Have you? Or do you just repeat whatever your political team tells you will play well with your base? My base, Trump said with a bitter laugh, cares about real life. They care about jobs, about putting food on the table, about keeping the lights on and the heat running. They don't care about theoretical temperature models 50 years from now. They care about right now. And you sitting here acting like they're ignorant for caring about their actual lives instead of your charts and predictions, that's elitism. Al, that's exactly why people don't trust the media anymore. This isn't about elitism, Roker said, his voice tightening. It's about reality. Climate change will affect those same people you say you care about, their homes, their jobs, their children's futures. You can't just ignore it because it's inconvenient. I'm not ignoring it, Trump said firmly. I'm prioritizing. I'm making sure we don't wreck people's lives while chasing policies that don't work. I'm making sure we don't hand our economy to China while we rely on energy sources that can't even keep the power on in winter. That's called being responsible, Al. Something you wouldn't understand, because you've never had to make the hard calls. The hard call, Roker said, his voice cracking with emotion, is admitting when you're wrong. The hard call is changing course when the facts demand it. The hard call is putting the future ahead of short-term politics. But you won't do that, will you? Because that would mean admitting you don't have all the answers. I never said I have all the answers, Trump replied, his tone now cold and deliberate. But I know when I'm being sold something. And that's what this is, a sale. Climate change is a product, Al. It's being sold to you, to the public, to everyone, by people who profit when you buy it. And I'm not buying. It's not a product, Roker said, almost pleading. It's science. Why can't you see that? Why can't you just look at the evidence with an open mind? Because I've seen too many experts be wrong, Trump snapped. I've seen too many failed predictions, too many people use fear to manipulate the masses. I'm not falling for it, and I'm not letting America fall for it. So go ahead, Al. Call me ignorant, call me whatever you want. But this conversation is over. He turned to leave, but Roker's voice stopped him. You're just walking away? When it gets difficult? When someone challenges you with facts? You just leave? Trump turned back slowly, his expression hard. No, Al. I'm leaving because this stopped being a conversation a long time ago. This turned into a setup. You want a real discussion about energy, climate policy, what's best for America? Fine, but not like this. Not with someone who already decided I'm the villain before I walked in. I didn't decide anything, Roker said, quieter now, but unwavering. I responded to your words. I challenged your claims with facts. If that feels like an ambush to you, maybe you should ask yourself why facts feel like an attack. Trump stared at him for a long moment. For a flicker of time, it looked like he might sit back down, but then he shook his head slowly. You really believe that, don't you? That you're the hero here, that anyone who disagrees is evil or stupid or both. That's sad, Al, really sad. You used to be better than this. And you used to be a businessman, Roker shot back, unwilling to yield. Someone who dealt with reality, with data, with results. Now you're just another politician saying whatever keeps your supporters cheering. Truth be damned. Truth? Trump gave a cold laugh. You want truth? The truth is you've been predicting disaster for decades and it keeps not happening. The truth is people are tired of being made to feel guilty for wanting a decent life. The truth is your climate crusade has turned into a religion, and anyone who doesn't worship at your altar is branded a heretic. That's the truth, Al. The truth, Roker said, spreading his hands in frustration, is that we're running out of time. The truth is every year we delay makes it worse. The truth is that future generations will look back and ask why we didn't act when we could have. That's the truth. Future generations, Trump said, his tone laced with defiance. They'll thank people like me for not destroying the economy over a maybe, for protecting the present instead of chasing someone else's fantasy of the future. History will be the judge, Al, not you. You're right, Roker said softly, a note of resignation creeping in. History will be the judge, and I think we both know how it'll rule. Trump studied him for a long, heavy moment. Something flickered behind his eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or the recognition of a bridge burned. You know what's really sad? He said finally. We could have had a real conversation. Found some common ground. But you couldn't help yourself. You had to make it personal. You had to be right more than you wanted to be effective. I am right, Roker said simply. And sometimes being right matters more than being polite. Then enjoy being right, Trump said, his tone final as he turned away. Enjoy it all by yourself. Because this is the last time I do anything with you or this network. You made your choice. Now live with it. As Trump strode toward the exit, Roker called after him one last time. That's what you do, isn't it? The moment someone challenges you, really challenges you, you walk away. You cut them off, declare victory, and leave. That's not strength, Mr. President. That's cowardice. Trump froze. Then he turned, his voice like ice. Cowardice is hiding behind consensus. Cowardice is being too afraid to think for yourself. Cowardice is attacking someone on your home turf in front of your friendly audience. You want to call me a coward, Al? Look in the mirror first. Roker met his gaze without blinking. I look in the mirror every day, he said steadily, and I can live with what I see, because I'm fighting for something that matters. Can you say the same? What do you think? Did Roker cross a line by calling Trump's stance willfully ignorant, or was he right to push back so hard? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Moments like this don't come often, and the next one might be even bigger.